Welcome to Repetition and Contrast, where we provide tools for creative entrepreneurs. And today we are talking about story studies, specifically just sort of a broad overview of the concept of genre. Genre is one of those things that I think mystifies people in ways that it shouldn't, you know? We all have the experience of, looking for a movie or a TV show and looking for something that's either fantasy or sci-fi or drama or mystery or, whatever. And these are genres, and there are subgenres within these genres that help us get even more defined. And realistically, genre can be thought of as a tool for how we are helping people who might be interested in the subject matter find our work. So, for example, I'm a sci-fi fan, and I'm constantly looking for good sci-fi material out there. Sometimes this is easy, and sometimes it's not. Specifically, this can be easy or hard because I like a lot of different versions of science fiction, but I don't like all versions of science fiction. So when sci-fi starts leaning into the superhero genre, and by the way, I love me some superheroes, in my opinion, it gets away from sci-fi. That's more of a fantasy concept, even if they're throwing around science-y terms. There's not a lot of science in most of the superheroes. They are very much fantasy characters. And so the thing that's entertaining about superheroes are the character development and the big action beats and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to looking at science fiction, which is one of the things I like to do, from the perspective of how is this particular thing that's happening in society going to change us. Like, it's exploring this idea, maybe it's going to change us in good ways, maybe it'll change us in bad ways, but all of those ideas being represented so we can thoroughly explore the question is one of the things that I really, really like about sci-fi, science fiction. And much of the science fiction that's being made today is less about that and more sort of a fantasy set in the future, or fantasy set now with people with fantastic abilities or whatever. And that's a lot of fun. But it isn't the sci-fi that I'm looking for right now. When I'm looking for superheroes, they got me. But anyway, genre is one of those things that can be difficult to understand. And I've heard several people mention this very famous quote about genre that's something to the effect of, how do you know genre? Well, you know it when you see it. And what I think it boils down to is that different genres have different ideas that have crept into them. And these ideas, I'm going to call them tropes. There are specific things that have to happen, or specific aesthetic ideas that have to be represented in order for a genre to meet the needs of the person looking for it. So I just gave you a breakdown of some things that I'm looking for when I am looking for science fiction. And if those tropes aren't present, then I feel cheated. This isn't the science fiction that I'm looking for. The same thing happens in a superhero movie. If I'm looking for a superhero movie and I don't have someone who has, either cool abilities or cool gadgets, fighting, deranged maniacs or whatever, then I'm going to feel cheated, because those are part of the genre. Those are the tropes that are part of that genre. And what I would challenge you to do is think about the genres that you like. Like, what are the stories that you've really enjoyed? And I would love for you to try to make a list of what tropes have to be present in order for you to feel fulfilled by the specific story type, you know? Um, Going along with that, there's a wonderful website that can help you out. It's called tvtropes.org. And they have a wonderful list of different kinds of genres and what are the tropes associated with it. What kinds of things have to happen in um, the action adventure film for us to feel that it is an action adventure movie. And they have a lot of categories here. And by the way, some of these are less a trope that has to be there for us to feel that it's the genre. Some of them are specific qualities of subgenres within the action adventure genre. And so qualifying the difference between those two ideas is a big part of how we are defining genre. But what is your genre, and what's a list of things that you can say are part of that genre? You know, so if I'm thinking about the specific subcategory of science fiction that I'm interested in, I would say that there needs to be some sort of piece of technology or scientific breakthrough or scientific knowledge that that exists in the world or the universe of the story, and the characters need to grapple with that in a way that helps me as a viewer understand the pros and cons of this thing. One of my favorite examples of this would be a movie from the 1990s called Gattaca, and the idea there is that it takes place in a world where um, uh, people have monkeyed with the human genome so much that they're only creating perfect children. So a man and woman get together. They don't just have a baby. They go to a doctor, and the doctor looks at his genes and her genes and finds like a perfect combination to make the perfect child for them. And there are three main characters in this movie. One is a character who represents sort of someone who didn't get all of that help. He is he's just a natural born person. He didn't have any gene splicing. There's another person that he interacts with who is an example of like a perfect male specimen from the society. And then there's a girl that he meets who is sort of in between. Like she is she was supposed to have been well constructed in this DNA way, but she isn't everything that her parents told her she would be, and so she's very insecure. But she's bought into the society, but she isn't everything she thinks she should be. And so seeing how these three people interact in this society is a big part of what makes that film work for me, for all the considerations that I'm looking for in this particular subgenre of science fiction. There are other genres of science fiction, military science fiction. Stargate would be a great example of military science fiction. Um, there is horror sci-fi. Alien would be a good example of that. So on and so forth. So, what are the genre considerations of the kinds of stories you like, and possibly the kinds of stories that therefore you want to tell? I would say make a list of them and see what you can come up with. Now, that having been said, I do want to make you aware that there are a handful of other ideas out there. There are a lot of people who talk about genres where you're either revising a genre. So what happens a lot of times is there will be a standard set of tropes for a genre, and then something will happen, like there will be a big piece of media that takes parts of those but then adds to it or takes away from the standard set of tropes, and now those have supplanted the tropes that people feel are part of the of the genre that they're thinking about. You know, a good example would be mid 20th century westerns, when some of the westerns started being made in Italy. They're called spaghetti westerns because of this. A lot of those sort of revitalized the genre of the western because they took away from and added tropes to the landscape and made a new thing, you know. And that thing was so successful, people started looking to those new tropes from the spaghetti western as the standard western tropes. The other thing is that postmodernism has crept into everything, and that always makes us makes the act of talking about this a little bit more difficult, because what will happen in things that are definitively postmodern is they'll take a set of normal tropes for a specific genre, apply them, and then try to twist them in unexpected ways, which can be really cool, you know? Some examples that this particular document is coming up with are things like The Simpsons and South Park and Scream, where all of these genre tropes that we associate with specific things, you know, Simpsons and South Park being two really good examples because they've done so many different sets of genre tropes. They've taken these things and tried to spin them on their head. And interestingly, sometimes the way that those things get spun becomes a new genre norm. There's also something called the anti-genre, where what people are trying to do is they are trying to make things that definitively exist without actually being without there being a way for you to categorize it. And I think that there have been a handful of examples of that. Maybe you can come up with some strong ones, but if you actually have something that fits in the category of not having a category, then we actually we say that it's in the category of anti-genre. And then there's hybrid genre, which a lot of people do because they're trying to do something where they're trying to appeal to fans of this thing and that thing. You know, I'm going to make a fantasy noir, so it's going to appeal to people who like detective stories and people who like fantasy. Well, no, actually, it won't. One of the most interesting things about hybrid genre is that what usually happens in those circumstances is you create a new genre and you're looking for fans of this new genre. People who like, you know, hard-boiled detective stories are probably not going to like your hard-boiled detective story set in the Middle Ages involving a sorcerer. Now, people who like sorcerers might like your hard-boiled take on it, but then again, they might not. You know, that might not be the specific genre thing they're looking for to fulfill their story needs. So you got to be careful with hybrid genre. I love the confluence, like I talked about a few weeks ago, of taking a couple different things and putting them in a blender and making something new. I think that is super cool. But you also got to know that sometimes when you do that, you're alienating parts of the audience as opposed to trying to bring multiple audiences together. Okay. That concludes everything that I have to say about genre in the big picture. I'm sure that in some future video, we're going to talk genre specifics about specific things. One of the things that I'm planning for the channel is that once I get past, you know, basic information, is to actually like take some films, do some deep dive analysis of them in relationship to all of these topics we've talked about, you know? So for example, in a few months, once I get past talking about all the basics, I would love to take a look at a famous film and us watch it together and then us dissect it together. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Until next time.